We're on now.
Ron?
Just have to wait for him. We have to come to the car. Who's Ron? He's the chair.
Okay, we'll work on the plan then.
Thanks.
Spent $5 on that card.
Playing 4:30. You're going to be quick? That's actually good because we got a lot of executive session stuff to do tonight.
I can tell you what they recorded a lot. They go and pick up cards and show each other and put them back in the rack. Yep. I have about 5 people that, yep. I never spent that much on a gift.
They're good. We don't need
Yeah, we don't do cards. We just, yep. That's what they do. Yep. Here's your, oh, thank you. Put it back. Because it's like, it's true.
Should I have gone and picked them up and run them?
Cool.
Well done, sir. Well
But
done.
it's
Here's the two bases for success mission.
oh, wrong seat.
Okay.
Oh, and you get you sign your name to that, it's almost contractual. So that can turn up in a court of law. That's why they don't do Valentine cards. You sign it, look. Never get a notarized. Do you have an extra pen? Let me see.
Mike, thanks for doing that interview for my student.
Oh,
He's a delightful young man, just like the last one you seen.
the first time I don't. Look at this, but you
Oh,
probably
okay.
don't want that.
Yes, but maybe she'll have.
No, check the drawers, but
Wait,
there aren't any.
wait.
Wait a minute, you know what, Mike? I might
Don't have a pen.
I might have one here.
Did you get one? I got a pencil, but
okay.
I like to sign, I like to be a pen.
Because the ones I keep in my car keep freezing, of course, so I take the ones out of there because it's too. Well, here you want. Oh, that's a sign.
Okay.
Here's I go, Mike.
That's okay, Peter, I'll just use Dale's here to do the
I know, I
sign.
hate being without a pen. Pen and a belt. I'll go home to get it.
Didn't used to care about belts.
I gotta have a belt. I gotta have a pen.
You know what? I had one in this coat and I took it out. I just
It's okay, I'll use Dale's to sign.
Did you ever watch a kid's soccer game? Because they was cluster
Yes.
against the ball.
Yes. When my kids played, I used to call it cluster ball.
Cluster ball, just told me. I got the impression, this looks like a cluster team right here. I know where to look.
Kicking each other.
Just find the ball and you find the kids.
Oh, I thought you were talking about kicking.
No, it's sort of like doing teams, they just cluster.
Saturday night.
No, you did this.
I don't know if they're gonna charge you guys. It's like $100. Over $100 a plate. Never once a year, like that. I know. That's why I'm hoping they're gonna hook me up. That should be good though. Be a lot of fun. By McGill.
You need to be free there. Please round them up where you did.
My brother sent me a text. I'm going to
Just one.
I'm reading it eventually.
12-hour window.
My brother the old. I said to me, the picture. What I thought the same.
Do you need a pen to sign, Mike?
No, Richard. Richard.
Still don't hear that thing on the radio. Really.
No journal vouchers, that's what it is.
PR or on PBS.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's like, I gotta find this, I gotta find this.
Right.
So there's, you know, go to
Yep.
Sign this one. Who's the star of the show, Mr. Farland?
Well, he's usually not here for 4:30.
I think I'm, and as soon as he gets here, then hand it over. So on Director McFarland's behest, I'd like to begin the meeting of the Plattsburgh Municipal Lighting Department. Let's begin with roll call, please.
Director Armstrong? Director Kelly?
Here?
Director Dowell?
Here.
Director Ensel?
Here.
Director McFarland? Director Kretzer?
Here.
Director Reed?
Present.
Manager Tracy?
Here.
CFO?
You've seen in your packet the minutes to, can entertain a motion to accept the minutes. By Councillor Kretzer, second by Councillor Dowdle. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Mr. Tracy would like to give us the financial report.
Yes, you'll have a chart there that shows you October for different years versus October 18. We're doing very good on the revenue side versus expenditures. The next page over shows you what what we've used as for energy and the revenue that we've brought in from selling that energy. Then the rest of them here is what our expenses have been. And in the back, you can see how much we paid for ZECs and RECs this year so far. We will have paid by the end of December probably close to 1.6 million in ZECs and about 15,000 in RECs to the
Was
state.
2017 the first year of Zex and Rex?
Yes, sir.
So how does that compare to the previous year? Is it about the same?
It's more,
More?
and it's going up again next year.
That's what you're saying.
And what we don't have here, they will be starting ORECs next year, Ocean Renewable Energy Credits, because New York State wants to build wind farms off Long Island. Don't know how much that's going to be, but the inside word was it may make the ZECs look like a bargain. So it's probably going to be pretty expensive. But we haven't heard what that's going to be yet. But probably sometime by March or April, the Public Service Commission will let us know.
And these are a fixed amount for depending on the number of customers, right? It's not a percentage of your.
Now it's based on power usage.
Right.
So it's billed to the customers. If somebody uses a lot of power, kilowatt hours, they'll pay a lot. If they use hardly any kilowatt hours, they'll pay very little towards that.
So let's just, as an estimate, just as a gross, it's not even an accurate number, but let's say it ends up being half a cent. And if you're paying 5.5 cents per kilowatt hour and goes up to 6, that's a big increase. If you're already paying 16 cents a kilowatt hour, goes up to 16.5 cents, it's a very small increase. So the percentage increase for our customers is actually quite a bit larger than the percentage increase elsewhere in the state.
True, sir. Unfortunately, we have no input on any of this.
Right.
It's been fought in the courts. The state courts upheld this, and the federal courts have also upheld it, that the governor has a right to put these charges through the Public Service Commission.
the industrial users who are only paying around 2.7 cents a kilowatt hour, are they taking the bigger percentage increase?
because they use the most power.
Ouch. Carrie, just getting you started there, Director McFarland.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry I'm late. So where are we right now?
We just did finance.
Oh, okay. So we're moving on to item number 3?
Well,
We have
need
to
to-
approve
We have to
that
approve the financial
resolution.
report.
Oh, okay. So, resolved. That the financial report as read is hereby ordered, received, and placed on file among the public records of the Municipal Lighting Department office. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Director Edsel, seconded by Director Kelly. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, move to a roll call. Director Armstrong is not here. Director Kelly,
Yes.
Director Daddle,
Yes.
Director Ensel,
Yes.
Director McFarland votes yes. Director Kretzer,
Yes.
Director Reed,
Yes.
that action passes. Number 3, department reports presented by MLD Manager William Tracy.
yeah, you have a list in there that shows work that we have done and in progress, basically over the last 3 months since I was last here. I don't need to read it to you, you can read it. It's pretty self-explanatory. On the IEP program, the major projects are all complete at this time, with one exception, and that's the City Hall window replacement. We're waiting for the results of the one window, and then they will issue a contract, I'm assuming at some point, for doing the rest of the windows. We have $250,000 reserved for that project.
Is the window ordered or?
I don't know.
We haven't actually solicited for bid yet.
I'm sorry?
We haven't solicited for bid yet.
Oh, okay.
We do have a bid package prepared
Just for the one test window?
just for one test window, correct.
Thank you.
So I'm holding the money then until they do that. I believe there's additional funds that have been for the rest of the windows obtained from the state. The one thing there, the installation program, we got a setback in September. The contractor that's been doing that project for us for the last 2+ years had a massive stroke and passed away. So now the Honeywell people who run the program are searching for a replacement contractor for him. So we're hoping they think they'll have one by April and we can start the program up again. But right now they're in a search and interview. And he was a good contractor. We never had any complaints from anybody without his work. Unfortunately, it happened. The only other thing is hydro contract. The last 2 or 3 questions on the contract were answered by our association today. They will be sent over to the other municipal association for their input, and then it goes back to the New York Power Authority. The feeling is that we're at the end of the tunnel with this program, and sometime early next year, we should have a finalized contract for signing, which would then extend the hydro contract from 2025 to 2040. And that's all I have.
Well, thank you, Bill. With that done, we're moving on to item number 4, bid requests. We have item number 4A, resolved. In accordance with the request, therefore, the MLD Board approves MLD to advertise for bids for PMLD bid number 2018-12-1, wooden utility poles. Bid opening date is January 29th, 2019 at 11 a.m. 4B, we have resolved. In accordance with the request, therefore, the MLD Board approves MLD to advertise for bids for the PMLD bid number 2018-12-2, transformer oil liquid screen and gas analysis testing. Open bidding date, January 29th, 2019 at 11:05 a.m. 4C, resolved. In accordance with the request, therefore, the MLD Board approves MLD to advertise for bids for PMLD bid number 2018-12-3, 15 kV pad mount interrupter switchgear. Opening bid date is January 29th, 2019 at 11:10 a.m.
That last one, also part of that bid will be two 1500 kVA transformers. This is for a project we're doing in Protection Alley for next year.
All three of them, or just for items?
Well, we need a new transformer down there, and the second transformer is a backup in case the first one ever fails. Otherwise, there'd be power issues down there.
Any further discussion or questions for Mr. Tracy before we send it to a vote? Hearing none, we'll move to roll call. Director Armstrong is absent. Director Kelly?
Yes.
Your first and second.
Oh, I'm sorry. First by Director Kretzer, second by Director Dowell. Roll call. Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Dowdle?
Yes.
Director Ensel?
Yes.
Director McFarland votes yes. Director Kretzer?
Yes.
And Director Reed?
Yes.
That action is adopted. Moving on to item number 5, we have old business. Any old business to bring?
I'll ask, the sale of the MLD building, is that being actively marketed?
Not at the moment. Right now, we'd had to get the deeds straightened out. We finally got the deeds finalized. They'll be finalized next week. There's still a lot of files in the basement, and I think upstairs on the first floor from finance. Public Works has been moving those out between paving jobs and snow removal. They still have quite a bit, I understand, to still move out.
All right. And the plan for Ruger Street, where are we with that moving?
Okay, I defer that one to the mayor and Dean.
Do you want to discuss this now, or?
The impact on MLD, I'm just trying to connect the move, the sale, the demolition.
Well, currently MLD is still being operated, but not on Ruger Street, correct, Bill?
No, we're still at Green Street.
Oh, yeah.
And do you have a time frame of when you'd want to start construction on the operation on Ruger Street? That's where you want to defer to the mayor and Dean?
Yes.
We can come back to that. I have a question. In the month of November, it's almost up. It's been a pretty cold month. Have we? Has there been any action? Have we gone over the quota at all in the month of November?
I really won't know until the middle of December when I get the electric bills in. I'm guessing we probably exceeded on Thanksgiving Day and the day after because it was so cold. Energy usage of the kilowatt hours were probably exceeded. But as for the rest of it, I think that would be probably minimal. The rest of it was fairly warm. But I really won't know until I see the electric bills themselves.
Is there any other old business that any council would like to bring up? Or any director?
Is I guess the answer to Dale's question something of a sensitive nature?
Nothing to add at this time.
Nothing.
Nothing to add at this time.
Okay. Any other old business? Moving on, new business. Does any director have any new business they would like to bring up? Director Kelly?
Yes, kind of related to your last question is, are we ready to deal with the cryptocurrency miners and charge them a higher rate if they do in fact use more energy that takes us over the top?
Oh, we know they will because the electric heat will drive us there.
Right.
As it does every year.
Right.
So yes.
So we have a way to segregate their usage and charge them an additional fee.
Yeah,
for
I have
it.
a set of formulas that have been devised, and some municipals have been using them already for the last 6 months because not every municipal gets enough hydro to cover their load, so they have to use supplemental power all year round.
Right.
So they're already, these formulas have already been used, they've been approved by the Public Service Commission.
Right.
And yeah, we're ready to use them.
Ready to go. Okay, thank you, Bill. Yeah, another sort of related question is, there's a gentleman named Ryan Brienza who wants to propose the idea of placing some cryptocurrency miners in public buildings as an experiment to see if they can provide heat for these. And I don't know if you know anything about this or not.
No, I don't.
Just based on what I've told you so far, does that sound like it might be a reasonable
It
idea?
depends where he's putting them, because we may have to upgrade services and stuff, which then the miners would have to pay for under right array. Our loads are for every building is sized by the need of that building. So now we're gonna increase the electrical load in there with these crypto machines. Then we're probably gonna have to upgrade the services and probably put larger transformers there.
Okay.
Like I said, it depends where we're talking about.
I think he's gonna come speak to us tonight at the council meeting. So maybe if you're still here, you can listen and see how you feel it might impact
And it also
the
depends upon
MLD.
the load. If they're over 300 kW, they're gonna be under rider A, which they're gonna pay a lot of money.
Right, right. Okay, okay. Thank you, Bill.
Could I just ask, the formulas that are developed, do they take into account the return to the community? Or just the energy usage? I mean, well, say you have some who uses a tremendous amount of power, but they're employing 500 people, they're this, they're that.
No, okay.
Okay.
The PPAC is what we're talking about. The PPAC will be one thing for the cryptocurrencies, it'll be a totally different one for everybody else.
Okay.
So we only have 3 cryptocurrencies that fit in that category right now. And everybody else will be, let's say, charge one, whatever the rate is, they will be taken out, it's separated out, they will get a separate price.
And that's solely based on their consumption?
That's based on their energy demand and energy usage.
Okay. Thank you.
That's the only thing I can charge them for. I can't charge them for rate of return or anything like that.
Okay.
And actually, if you operated any time in that month, it's not done on a monthly basis, right? So if you operate any time in that month, even if it's the warm days, your bill is still gonna go up if you're one of these cryptocurrency operators.
Yeah, the only way they could avoid it legally is they would have to shut down, we pull the fuses on their operation and their meter, and they stay offline until the 1st of April.
So they no longer have to share, they no longer have the benefit of sharing their additional costs with all the ratepayers. The ratepayers are insulated from it, but
Yes,
they
sir.
are sharing the costs in essence with each other. So knowing that, you have no incentive to shut down on those cold days, because why not get the other 2 cryptocurrency operators to help subsidize my bill? So there's still some game playing that could occur, but the ratepayers absolutely are protected. Still, if it's cold enough, and it would have pushed you over the quota even if the cryptocurrency operators were not in town, ratepayers still may end up going over the quota and have those surcharges, but it won't be anything to do with the cryptocurrency operators anymore.
And typically in the wintertime, December, January, and February, and sometimes a little March, we do go over it, and it's the electric heat. 97% of the residential homes in the city are heated electrically. Most of the commercial businesses are heated electrically. There's a few exceptions like Kenny Drug and Applebee's and stuff like that. They want to keep all their stores the same type of heating, so when they compare them, their cost effectiveness, they're not looking at apples and oranges. But we have worked that out, so, and it's been in use since March, like I said, in some municipalities, because they only get a limited amount of hydro and they have to buy supplemental power all the time, and they've been charging the cryptocurrencies in their area to this speed. They're not happy about it, but they do get charged.
Is Applebee's in City Electric?
No, I just picked them out
Oh, okay.
because they're Kitty Drugs is, we offered Kitty Drugs electric heat, and they said no, they wanted gas because all their stores are buy gas. Same thing with Applebee's. Applebee's builds 3 types of stores or restaurants, small, medium, and large. And they're all built the same way, they're all got the same type of HVAC systems. I actually asked them one time when they were building the one up at Champlain Centers there, what happens with, I think it's a medium size there, what happens if you find out you need a larger space? You just put an extension on the building? They said, no, we knock the building down and we go to the larger plan and build a whole new building so that the buildings are consistent all the way through. When their finance officer looks at the revenues and expenses, they'll look at the same thing for each building. There's no differences.
Point of order, Director Armstrong is now joining us. Welcome.
Hello.
Is there, Director Armstrong, we're on new business. Is there any other new business that any director would like to bring forward? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 7, persons addressing the board. Now's the time for any member of the public to come address the board. We would ask that you can direct your comments toward MLD. The regular council meeting will be after this, and we ask that you keep your comments to under 5 minutes. Any member of the public wish to address the board?
I'd like to, I don't have to be first, but I may be the only one.
Come on up, please come up to the podium.
This about an MLD related issue?
Oh, yeah. Municipal Lighting Department. My name is Andrew Goltz, and I live in the city. I'm not sure where I live, but I'm around. I call in a lot of the burned out traffic, streetlights that illuminate the street. I call in a lot of them, and I wonder if there could be someone that's assigned to do it, maybe the police department, because the situation I run into is I work later at night. I prefer working at night, so I'll drive down various streets, usually in my neck of the woods, which is, I guess you'd call it Broad Street, South Catherine, and I'll pull over, get a piece of paper, because you can't remember the light standard if you've got 2 or 3 of them. And I always worry the police are going to wonder what the heck I'm doing. I'm just checking for burned out lights, right? So I wonder if the city would assign someone the task, because I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, there's probably 15 or 20 that are out, and I could have a list this long, so I call it in, sometimes 10 o'clock at night, and I go through my list. And it's not my job, but I think if they're there, we've got the expense of having a light fixture that should be functioning, and sometimes the street's dark. Sometimes I'll notice the street's dark, and oh yeah, well there's one flickering on and off. So I don't mind doing it. I like to save the world. My friends will sometimes say, you can't save the world, but I'm trying, one street light at a time. But I wonder if the city would assign the task to someone. It's got to be a nighttime job, obviously.
Well, I do think that as DPW patrols and as the police patrol, they do raise those wood sheets to you.
They do call it in.
Well, yeah, you receive the calls, but there's a whole bunch now. If I made a list, I was away for 3 weeks.
Well, we're backed up right now because we had Christmas decorations and a few other things. We got a stack about this thing. The problem is when we change out a whole bunch of lights, they all die again at the same time. So we're working through that list to catch back up.
One at Heald Funeral Home on Oak Street, it's been up for at least 3 months.
I don't know that one, I don't know. We are dependent on some streets, people don't call them in. And sometimes they get a call, well, it's been out for 3 months, this is the first call we got, so.
I don't want to be repetitive because I'll get to be a pest.
No, we prefer you to be a pest.
You can say it publicly.
If there's lights out, and people haven't called them in, we need to know about it.
Maybe I should have a beacon on my car that says street light monitor, so the police don't pull me over and just, oh, you've been drinking again? No.
And if I see lights out as I'm driving around at night,
But you gotta stop, shine your flashlight. Sometimes the tags are aluminum and it's hard to see.
Well, yeah, well, what I quickly look at is what the house number is. I mean, some houses, you can see the number pretty good.
Yeah.
And you just say, okay, it's in front of 15 Cornelia.
I'm sure your guy that answers the phone at night, he knows me.
Oh, yeah, but that's why he's there.
No, I know. So I just thought maybe the city, but if you guys are backed up, I understand. If you've got a big project that I'm not seeing, and you guys are at it day and night, and I'm calling in like this, so I just.
Well, that's fine, because you may call in once, then nobody's called in, so we will go through them and sort them out.
All right.
I'd rather you call them in than not call them in, let's put it that way.
The town of Plattsburgh, and it was Art Bro in charge, and he died suddenly, as we all know. He was a volunteer fireman, and he was in charge of lighting. There's lights in the town of Plattsburgh outside of Walmart that haven't been fixed in 2-3 years. And they're just consistently out, they're not replaced, they just haven't. So the city is much better at it, but there's so many right now.
Yeah, we're aware of that, we're trying to catch up with that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for calling.
Thank you, Andrew.
I should also let you know, we're also trying to come up with a one-stop line for these sorts of things that our taxpayers want us to be aware of, and then that would be put in a computer and be directed to the right department and everything. So we're trying to create a one-stop shopping for that.
211, is it 211?
Something like that we're trying to put in place, but it's still a work in progress. But we'll let you know.
I wonder if that could be on the Plattsburgh app, where it might associate with parking, because we've had that discussion, I'm drifting now, but there's the parking app, which works so well, but every city uses a different one. And I use the one in different cities, but you have to install it. It could take you 10 minutes, or you just put your credit card in, but maybe that could be associated, where people could send in a burned out light, or,
We'll look into that, yeah.
you need to have a 12-year-old.
I think that there's a mechanism on the website for reporting, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So I don't know if you ever visit the city website, but there are a lot of resources there that I think a lot of people aren't familiar with. You can sign up for alerts and sign up for messages regarding snow removal or any number of things. And then also there's different places to report issues.
That's what I was doing with the town of Plattsburgh, and just when I got used to it, Art Bro died suddenly. What was it? I mentioned something a few months ago about the city's website that I thought something could be done better, something in French maybe? Something comes to mind. I called in something about the city's website. It needs to be freshened up. I think someone needs to go in there every 2 or 3 months and just change the picture.
I think we're getting a little bit off topic from MLD, but we're...
Yeah, the last time I looked, it was... There might have been a street light of that picture of the boat, basically.
And the whole website
connection
is
somewhere.
translated to French if you just hit the French button.
There was something else. I know there's a French button. There was something that I had mentioned to the city that should be more pronounced, but we're drifting, sorry.
That's right. Thank you, Andrew.
Would any other members of the public like to address the MLD board at this time? Hearing none, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Director Kretzer, seconded by Director Ensel. Roll call, Director Armstrong,
Yes.
Director Kelly,
Yes.
Director Dowdle.
Yes.
Director Ensel.
Yes.
Director McFarland also votes yes. Director Kretzer.
Yes.
Director Reed.
Yes.
Passes unanimously at 5:02.
So let's then begin our work session for this evening. We've got a couple of items that I'd like to move into executive session for, but before that, I'd like to use this opportunity to have our newest counselors and our returning counselor, if you wish, take your oaths. So please come forward. Of course, you can't act until you're in your official capacity until January 1, but we are permitted to allow you to take an oath before that. Please come forward.
Do you want me to come around?
Sure, thanks. Unless you'd rather do it later. Your oath still applies until January 1.
So I can't leave.
Well, I guess we've already taken an oath of office.
Can I
We're going to get you to read the language on the oath. If you'd like to do it one by one, and then the media is here too, so if you'd like a picture as well. So would you like to read, you can like to read your oath?
It's a mixed bag sitting here right now.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the City of Plattsburgh, Counselor of the City of Plattsburgh, New York, according to the best of my ability.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of New York, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of City of Plattsburgh Councilor of the City of Plattsburgh, New York, according to the best of my ability.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the City of Plattsburgh Councilor of the city of Plattsburgh, New York, according to the best of my ability.
Would you like to have a picture from Elizabeth? Thank you. Thanks very much. Welcome.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
We'd also like for this time move into executive session. If I can have first and second, we're going to discuss collective negotiations pursuant of Article 14 of the Civil Service Law and proposed sale or lease of real property, the publicity of which would substantially affect the value thereof. I'd also like to invite our new councilors to join us. Of course, they're not in a voting capacity, but merely to see the dialogue, because these are issues that are certainly going to affect them as well. Do I have the first, Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. And also joining us tonight for part of the session will be a representative from White and Burke, and Richard Marks will be joining us for information at one point as well.
Make room for you.
We'll start off with Richard, you can join us first. We'll start off with that.
I just don't. I report to my.
Any time tomorrow morning.
And they appoint me there that.
Okay. So
They set my salary. So I
want to start after the first of the year. Shift anything back in there.
Some people say about me in America.
When I was moving to the end of Friday last week, I did a great.
But you guys know.
Yeah, it was gonna take those out too. Yeah, I didn't want to leave them there. Okay, Andrew. Oh, there used to be calling, so.
There used to be what?
There used to be calling. When I get the report Monday morning, they say, well, we haven't heard from Mr. Welch.
I drive across the country twice a year. California, my little truck, I drive across the country.
Well, I've driven across the country, well, I've driven as far as Montana, but not as old vehicle. You get a wrap car. When I get it back, it's got a 5,000 miles on it. What do you do, sell them when you get to California?
No, I just have to fly out there and drive back.
Oh,
You know, about
okay.
3 hours.
salt and stuff.
So I drove this thing back, I had no trouble, $1,500 piece of trash.
You sightsee on the way back, or you just drive straight through?
I missed a lot of things, I wish I could stop that. And seeing here, this trip, I went with a friend that wanted to run around. It was just they stopped out here, and stopped Carlisle, and we drove over across Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So we did do a little bit of testing, but you never get back. Every place is about that's 2-3 hours.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
I was tired, I was
Well, some people do. I mean, I watched the show on Wednesday nights, going RVs. People are retired, they're buying RVs, some of their houses, and they're,
property tax, maybe around in Arizona, it costs $100 a year.
and they're going across country. Wherever they want to go, they set up shop there and do their thing, and
Imagine not being under pressure. The mall was under pressure because they bought the paper and cheese building. It takes some money, got back, and I figured I had a month before it still the day after I got back. Roofs said, you look crazy. Pockets everywhere. I had a good time. I just drove back. I just got back 2 weeks ago. I drove at 2,000, most of it, 260,000 miles. Drove down 3 times. Get on the road.
well, actually, I did have one problem 3 years ago. I rented a Ford Mustang Avis. Probably a year old. Well, no, actually, it was that model year. I really had that full price. And I drove it out to Montana. Well, I realized when I started driving it that I had to be careful where I parked because I suddenly realized, well, now I got a car that car thieves really love. But the funny thing was, I took such great care to take getting down to Montana. 30 minutes after I got out there, the car was demolished. What happened was, I was going out there for a reenactment, and I parked on the site.
Military reenactment.
No, yeah, actually reenacted the 7th Cavalry, Custer's last stand. And I was down, moving into my tent and everything, and this sudden thunderstorm came up, and it dropped hailstones the size of golf balls. And it was pretty quick, like 10-15 minutes. And somebody came running in and told me, you better go up to your car. You drove a Mustang? Yeah, you better go look at it. You're not going to like what you see. I get up there, the back window is totally smashed out. The rear side, the rear light to the back of the driver's side is gone completely, smashed onto the ground. The front windshield is crisscrossing cracks all over the place. And then it looks like somebody took a bulky hammer and beat up on the hood and the trunk and so forth. Must have been about 50 or 60 dents in the thing.
I used car wash last week and fixed the different trucks. Heavy-duty truck. I saw one in the parking lot with grinders. I think someone took a hammer to it. Because all the creases where the fenders folded, it's always the hardest part. And the dent is just to keep it from the somebody went around with it.
Well,
Once you have that,
I called up Avis, and I got the local Avis, they knew about the thunderstorm. They said, yeah, this flew up over the Yellowstone to the cross. And I said, well, because I had a special car, they were gonna have to search to find an Avis rental place that has an equivalent. Well, the nearest airport was Billings, which was an hour, and said there's nothing there. They found one in Bozeman, which was 5 hours away. What they did was they hired a tow truck company, who was an hour from Bozeman. He had drive Bozeman, and of course, he had one of those trucks which rolled back in the truck. So he went there, picked up the rental car, and they gave me a Kia Forte, the old buttons, thing. And he loaded it up. They gave him the paperwork. So then he had to drive 5 hours to come see me. He caught up with me about 1:30 in the morning on the Indian reservation that was on. And it was kind of funny because I was sitting there for 30 minutes waiting for him. And then all of a sudden, I realized there was these cars parked all around me, behind me, in front of me, off the side street. And I was like, they just had their marker lights on. Well, it turned out it was the tribal police. They were keeping an eye on me.
That's like me when I go around looking for my street.
Yeah. Well, they never told me what I was doing, because I was at a gas station that was well lit, but it was out of business. He showed up, we all flew the car, we all loaded it was, yeah. But by the time I backed off the key, and I looked around, tried to believe the guys. They figured out what was rolling out. So he loaded up the car, and he was going back to Boston, and at one in the morning.
I'll leave work, at least you're on the road.
I didn't.
No,
I didn't lock that down for you. No, just make sure.
No, I'm working.
Okay.
Look at your guy.
Come on, we're all free for all.
Okay, I can do it. Why didn't you park over here? I think it's totally slush.
Where is that?
No, I wouldn't.
You know, it's a meeting like this.
On my mind.
Is that that's our handicap. Comes in right by the elevator.
Now I know. One time I was
What do you have to do? Walk around the front?
I had to go to
During the day,
Air
you're
Force
going to
function.
parking space out here. Was that night like this?
I drink soda, I drink beer. So I was the passenger
I
side,
used to think that,
he was driving, and we come into our little German village we were living in. We got pulled over by the police. And they came to my side, and they said,
Yes.
"You been drinking or anything?" I said, "Yeah, I'm a designated drug." Designated super person. And the jury got slapped. And he said, "Okay." He checked her, he said, "Get your phone." Bye. But over there, the same thing, they take the risks. If they run into police traffic, they get caught. I mean, when I was in the Air Force in the 1980s, every time we had a commander's function, it was
there's drop box over there.
expected to be a king of the air back, and the civilians in the military would have some war with each other before we left. One time he had this as a civilian, he rode his bike, he was right near the base, got on his bicycle, and he was walking through. The security police saw him. Security police called him, found him, stopped him, put him in the police car with his bike, and instead of taking him to the police station and putting themselves up to the top, they took him to the front gate of the base and turned him loose onto the most dangerous street in San Bernardino County, the most dangerous road. I mean, this road, it was only a mile long, but at one point they had a running total on how many people killed or injured. It was bad. What it was in the desert, and the road dropped off the side. So if you ran off the road, you rolled your car. Well, he got on the bike, and he started pedaling a half mile to the nearest town where he lived. And got barely 4 miles down the road. When he ran headlong into oncoming car, he went through the windshield on the passenger side. Now this one gets interesting. The only person in the car was the driver. He got out of the car. The guy was dead on contact. He got out of the windshield, laid him on the side of the road, and drove down the road and drove into the base. Top of the gate, very top of the gate, waiting for the church. Why is the windshield and your hood covered in blood? They were asking, the guy drove to family housing where he lived and sat there for 2 hours. He was in a state of shock. A few minutes later, the body was found on the side of the road, and nobody knew what the story was. Maybe 2 hours later, the guy finally came out of his scooter, he called and told what happened. And then all hell broke loose. They wanted to rewind the song sergeant that was on the gate waves that car through. With a big hole in the windshield and everything, and the hood and the plastic was all covered with blood. Why he didn't ask any questions. Eventually, right now they're not costing that. Yeah, I know, we just finished that about 2 years ago. I'm waiting for the price to drop. Once we get it out, so we'll talk about the ones that we had Mercury lights. We got rid of old Mercury. Yeah, we got rid of those. Actually, these lights put out more lights.
The LEDs I noticed, they have a bad habit of flickering on and off.
Well, these two too. I mean, we know when the bulb is getting ready to die, it will start cycling. It will come on and it will go off. Because the bulb is dying. Yeah, no, the bulb is starting to die. And if you notice, the duration it stays on, it's shorter and shorter until eventually it goes out of place. And that's the warning the bulb thing needs to be changed. Just try to go of the street light and say, I put a bulb on the light of well, you can tell that house number. You can tell us it's in front of the house. The guys that we like here don't give us across the street. If you tell them, they'll get there because they look it up on the map and they can figure it out. Like I said, guys, they're busy like cattle. We have a staff right now. We will use them that. Average, so I drive South Catherine, Broad Street, Oakland, that's why you're 14. Well, there's ones on Margaret Street too, but they don't belong to us, they belong to the county. Oh, really? I don't know if Margaret, when you cross the Smoky Street Bridge, the street lights on the left, that is town property. The left is the west side. Yeah, as you're going north. North, yeah. West side. Yeah. Those are the town, the cities on the right side. Cities on the right side. So yeah, I know there's quite a few out there. I was just starting to email Art Burrows. He has to get into a rhythm. Yeah. And he died a month later. Somebody, one in the town, like Walmart, one of them had it for 2-3 years. I'm saying on the street. Yeah. On Route 3. Well, we got behind. We wanted some big local projects. Oh, yeah. All work and no fun makes Jack Harry no boy. Nobody ever goes to the grave saying, I just went for a couple more weekends. No. Driving from work at 11:30 and walked. Yeah, well, you don't want to do that at the state trooper. And if the report rained on Sunday.
I went to your office. It says open. Thank you.
Multi-phase electric transformer I've been all my electric for the last 30 years.
There's two public comments. One, the first one,
One meter.
the first meeting is you're supposed to only talk about.
Where is the topic?
Anything that's
Which I know is easier said than done, yes.
On Broad Street, we wanted to put in, the vault, everything, except for I dropped my volt, my amp to just below the building doesn't have enough power. It's not mine. There's not enough juice. I used to get a lot of water. 2x6 walls, double dated. My grandfather had a double dated water radiator.
But then I changed the
And not too many oils in the oil system.
I would have left it as well. Just like you know your job, you know where the transformers are, you know where the poles are, people say, well, we need a little bit extra, some extra amps. Around here, I'm not putting in, roll the wire, all the way down. No, I can't roll the wire.
Just has the cable. Oh, wait.
Dig up the driveway,
Oh, no, there were some other ones too. He's got
you hire a carpenter to do that, you can pay. People are moving in on Monday, on Sunday, I was there. 3 or 4 wires in the wire now. We do more than 3.
Yeah. Or if they're different sizes.
At first, don't put the wire in. I'm here on Sunday.
Oh, yeah. That's in case my stuff all breaks.
The wire doesn't melt, it'll give me the tape. Like the old saying, not by getting it's getting you.
know, list them all first and see what you got. One easily back. You see, you know which guy are you know which guy gets a service out. Yeah, you know. I just think
So how was the
I know how you are. I know this is one At some point, I smell something. Every time I nationalize out like 3 hours, and I wake up and like my family has a lot of their friends over there. It came on there's like 20 people in our house. And it's like, yeah, I was like, what's happening right now? But all in all, it's nice. Yeah, it wasn't really much less snow. We got more snow. I know, like, my stepdad was so he goes up and he drives up. Sometimes it's still so bad. One time it's like snowing out and like chunks pushing out of it. It's just ridiculous. I can't get Buffalo and like the football stadium gets snowed in. Like, you should they've done that once where they had like the crazy films. Like they have the ESPN with like all the people in the stadium Oh yeah, yes, that's right. I understand. Yeah, it was a week, 2 weeks ago. I was there. I was watching it. Right after the Giants game, and then you just on this highway. They don't usually talk. You get their picture signed at the It's tough and like her dad always organizes like how to get around here. Like, I'm like, I was following him. So if you're running, and we're like, you did New York City, we're running, take the metro back and pull it, someone on the side of the back. So whatever phase. Yeah, that was interesting. He sent me an email asking about something about Philadelphia. I was just there. They got a apartments in it. And then I didn't realize I didn't realize small apartments. And then I saw the email later. What a coincidence. And I didn't realize it. And he's like, oh, yeah. And they're like, I saw people talking about it. I was like, that looked like work at 2, and you come to 9, and it's an hour drive. And I was just like, why'd you leave Does he work at a restaurant? So he owned the restaurant. I was like, I'll just say in the office, so wherever you back there, it's really like, that's that was my girlfriend sent a picture of she was walking in her car, and I was like, where's the snow? And there's like a big snow. No, she lives outside of New York City in Westchester County. It's a small town. So, and the snow. Lucky though. Yeah. It's about in Saratoga. I don't know if you need to in Saratoga. Yeah, Jersey. Yeah. Far away too. There's a lot of good old Tom. It does work out with her, with all of her own stuff. She's doing Boston. Yeah, she bought us Boston. She did Boston. She qualified. She didn't hear anything last year. Crazy stuff. Obviously, we're not going. No. Yeah, maybe something. There's no reason not to. When I was like 9 grand, I was like, I was shorter distances. And she always did outward stuff. So, me, I'm like, I had so much. I guess I was bar and all that. You never had luxury. You like to go see a people. So, I guess when I try to run 26 miles fast, some of it's me. Like, to see some people finish. Like, one guy, I've seen a couple of even if you're like really great for it, it's really because you're still running. Even if you can ignore the physical part, you're just moving for however long, whether it's 2 hours at US or 3 hours or 4 hours, however long. Okay, so it's crazy because it's my friend year after year for college campus did the full undergraduate class, and I just ranked for it because I had college it's a 2 month or a 2 months away. 2 months, like 160 miles away. It's pretty good. He's a so finished this 9 months you're all that like 9 hours. Like you're upset like that's they just travel out something's mind. Classic the one to do that is a goal to have. Maybe you can scale that down considerably, not necessarily keep it that long. I know at some point it's almost like a lot of bike doing is just that you train in the muscle memory. So even if I was like, I could say like, me, I used to do triathlons before, they had like, you like run a mile and a half, you bike here, and so the running part I'm crushing. And I'm watching all those people just fly by me and bike, no matter what, like I just didn't have the biking part of this muscle. Just the late class points, you have a lot of updates, so you gotta know how to gear and how to bike. Usually you have people who do like the 6-day races or however many hours you can run, like that. I mean, it's crazy to run 5 days. There's someone who like they ran, they went through back up and down the Grand Canyon, set some girls at forest record. Stuff like that. So we do it because of the reasons like the Badlands where it's just must really dislike yourself. This one's here. Oh, wait, what's it on? I want to instantly watch it. I know, so like lasted at least, I don't know, full Ironman. When it started, we would just do one continuous thing, and I would watch it, just one continuous thing, and people sprinting, just a water sprawl, and people would finish. I'm imagining myself one there, I would not get it. Now they do it right. I just see this just the white shirt under like an hour before I can imagine I can't really swim. Like if I was at the city beach, I could always like so long. I can go X amount, but I could swim. From here to my heart was especially if it's an alternate. Yeah, it's not right. I think my personal is a little off of my issues like this. Honestly, being involved and I wouldn't get so I would have that I had issues renting today. I tried to rent my couch. Only mine to find out if I'm kind of the day trying to turn off like a PDF, and it's just like air message. We kept running around to it, like like whatever, I'll stop. It's impressive. Two of the things, like one of the things, one of the things I can't really talk about too much, quarter to two of the things we've been talking about. Oh my gosh, they're gonna rid of us.
Hopefully Josh will be, unfortunately, stop it.
With some of these, well, he stopped with some of these, because like I understand like the idea of, I mean, I wouldn't want you to be, going first because but that's the thing, something like two of these things. But if any, just, whether it's the employee thing you just like the market by it's too dangerous. It's gotta get like one of the world's famous doctors who just when I first came, the first one home, and then we started speaking or something. God, it's so loud.
No, for just a return. I think Dale has. I think we must be ready to go.
So we're returning from executive session. I apologize for the delay. We're discussing a matter regarding collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law and proposed sale or lease of real property, the publicity of which would substantially affect the value thereof. These were informational discussions only. No decisions were made. And I'd like to begin the meeting of the Common Council tonight with a pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Councilor Armstrong? Here. Councilor Kelly?
Here.
Councilor Dowell?
Here.
Councilor Enzel?
Here.
Councilor McFarland?
Here.
Councilor Kretzer?
Here.
We've got a very full agenda tonight. Thank you all for coming. Just a very brief comment. The holiday train came through town, what was it, yesterday, wasn't it? Or the day before?
Tuesday.
It's just beautiful as ever. Mr. Moore actually rode up here from Port Henry on the train with me and his grandson, so I'm very appreciative of CP Rail doing this for us each year. It's been 20 years in a row they've done it. They've raised something like almost $20 million for primarily food shelves along the way. And I think Plattsburgh, of all the cities they went to, had the best turnout. So it's really nice to see everybody out there on a nice fall day. Thank you.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on November 20th, 2018 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Kretzer, second by Councilor Dowell. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending November 28th, 2018 in the amount of $123,347.26 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Counselor Kelly and seconded by Counselor Dowdell. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. You've got in your packets the usual reports. Let's ask for any additional committee reports, beginning with government spread and city operations. Counselor Custer.
I don't have any updates, Councilor Armstrong.
Nor do I.
And we have our meeting next week.
Yes.
Finance and budget, Counselor Kelly. Oh, it was city infrastructure, Counselor Ansel. Got you again.
Easy to do. No report at this time.
Finance and budget, Counselor Kelly.
No updates.
Public safety, Counselor Dowdell.
No updates since last week.
Plattsburgh Public Library, Counselor Armstrong.
The meeting was canceled for this week because of the weather.
And MLD Board President, Councilor McFarland, better have an update.
Oh, yes, we just had our meeting at 4:30. It was very entertaining. We had, we discussed some burned out lights, we discussed cryptocurrency, and we passed brought three bids forward. And if you want to see more, I'm sure you can check it out on the YouTube channel.
Thank you. Resolve the reports as listed are hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Armstrong and second by Councilor Dowdell. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Passed. No correspondence or recommendations from boards at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bills allotted by the common council for the week ending November 30th, 2018, in the amount of $1,366,464.22 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly and seconded by Councilor Ensel. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is the opportunity for the public to please come address the council on any issues that are on the agenda tonight. There will be another public comment period at the end of the meeting for general issues. If you do come up, please confine your comments to 5 minutes and state your name and address. Nobody quite yet? Please continue.
Motion to remove item 7A from the table.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, seconded by Councilor Kelly. Roll call to remove item from the table.
Councilor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Dowdell?
Yes.
Councilor Ensel?
Yes.
Councilor McFarland?
No.
Councilor Kretzer?
Yes.
Discussion on the item itself?
So what has exactly changed since last time?
Go ahead, dear. Go ahead.
Well, we did change a few items on the initial proposal. A couple that come to mind is that we did cap the number of sick days.
Yeah, you should have received a copy with the highlighted areas that were changed.
We did.
Which came to 75, and also the bereavement days and personal days were taken out of the proposal.
Why were bereavement days and personal days taken out?
Well, in some discussion with the mayor, we talked about it, and we thought that since we were increasing the number of sick days earned per year from 9 to 12, that perhaps in case those days were needed, that sick days could be used.
Sick days could be used for bereavement.
For bereavement.
Minor correction, I think you increased the number of sick days from about 7.5
to 12. We had discussed 9 at one point.
And I know as recent as today, there were, I think, emails coming from department heads with questions or concerns. Did you have the opportunity to see those?
I hadn't had a chance to look at those.
Did you have an opportunity to see those from this afternoon?
I did.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Yes, thank you.
I have a couple of questions for the committee. One is that I believe at an earlier version of this, we were at a 1.5% annual increase for those who had stepped out of this,
Yeah.
out of their grid. So that has been eliminated, as I understand.
No, it
Or
says it may be.
it will be discussed at each year
Correct,
Right.
at the council's
to see the
discretion.
amount and
At the council's discretion.
to see what we can afford, in other words.
Exactly.
It would be a COLA for those who've stepped out of longevity and steps.
Okay, if the council approves it.
Exactly.
Certainly.
It's always
It's not an
subject.
automatic thing from, and
That
that,
flexibility addressed some of my concerns about how we could budget it, so you do still have the autonomy to make those determinations every year.
okay.
Just
and
so
that-
everyone's clear, we're talking about the resolution
Yes.
that's been tabled. There's also a resolution for
Right, they're,
consideration.
they're
of exactly
asking
what
the
you're talking about.
differences, so we're addressing that now.
Oh, so.
Okay, so are we voting on your latest resolution?
No, you're
then?
voting on the one,
That was
the,
tabled.
This is the previous
The
one that
updated
was
resolution.
tabled.
I
Very
see.
confusing.
So there will be another one that has.
It's
these
in,
additional
under
changes.
item
Oh,
for initial consideration,
I see.
and you received a copy of that.
Yes, we did.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we did. Thank you.
So there'll probably be further discussion forward.
Regarding that newest document, yes.
So would you be recommending rejecting this one and then later
I
in the
would.
meeting substituting?
Rejecting this one and substituting it with the one that's, new one that's being proposed.
Correct.
Offering for initial and implementing real board.
I believe that would be my
Yes.
That would be my
Desire.
desire.
Any further discussion? I imagine there'll be more discussion later on when the substitute is brought up. Are you prepared for a vote now?
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody understand that they're voting on the previous
The
version?
the one that was presented last week.
Yes.
Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
No.
Counselor Kelly?
No.
Counselor Dowdle?
No.
Counselor Ensel?
No.
Counselor McFarland?
No, thank you.
No.
No.
Counselor Spencer?
No.
The motion is defeated. Motion to remove item 7B from the table.
I'd recommend keeping it on the table because we still do want to incorporate any new policies. into it.
Okay.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves MLD to advertise for bids for PMLD bid number 2018-12-1, wooden utility poles, bid opening date January 29th, 2019 at 11 a.m.
Moved by Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Dowdle. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Spencer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves MLD to advertise for bids for PMLD bid number 2018-12-2, transformer oil liquid screen and gas analysis testing, bid opening date January 29th, 2019 at 11:05 a.m.
Moved by Councilor Cresser, second by Councilor McFarland. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Spencer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves MLD to advertise for bids for PMLD bid number 2018-12-3, 15 kV pad mount interrupter switchgear, bid opening date January 29th, 2019 at 11:10 a.m.
Moved by Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Armstrong. Discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore, and in compliance with section 241-2 of the city code, the common council authorizes the mayor to sign a commercial lease agreement with Navtours USA Inc. to lease a portion of the space in the city marina building located at 2 Dock Street. The annual rent shall be $4,250 and the term of the lease is 2 years.
Moved by Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion?
How does this compare as far as the annual rent to the previous agreement?
The previous agreement involved an exchange of rent and various slots and services rendered. This is now simply a commercial lease of space. So it's really apples and oranges, but they won't be performing the same functions or receiving the same slips as part of the package this year as they had in previous
Just
years?
to add in some more to that, so the former agreement was a marina management agreement, which expired on its own terms at the end of October. This is purely a lease agreement for basically an office space and a little bit of storage space within the marina building.
Down at the building.
So they're still gonna have a business presence, but they're no longer going to be the city marina operator or manager.
And the city now is gonna be managing the marina themselves, or ourselves.
Yes.
Temporarily, until we formulate a different plan, nothing included, we'll have to do that at least next year.
And as part of this, they're also going to be maintaining 12 slip, or renting 12 slips, just at the typical lease, at the slip rate.
Okay.
Not towards us.
Not as part of this resolution, just as a customer of the city marina, they're gonna be
Right.
leasing 12 spaces.
So that's.
So that's not included in this price.
That's not, I don't know if it's exactly 12, but
Yes. And I think it's a separate slip agreement, just like all the other customers have.
So that's why they want to maintain their presence. If they're not managing, it'll be for these 12 slips.
Correct.
But we're going to vote on the 12 slips at a different
no,
time.
you don't, that's
No, you
not.
wouldn't.
That's right, that's
Okay.
just a, they're just renting 12 slips.
Okay, so they're just going to, okay, that's why they want to be there, all right.
Any further discussion or clarifications? Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Pretzer?
Yes.
Whereas with the assistance of.
I'd like to make a motion to waive the reading and move the resolution.
Second?
Moved by Counselor Pretzer, second by Counselor Ansel. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Discussion on the item itself.
Well, I'd like to say that as a result of conversations with the Director of Community Development Office, as one who's concerned about process, I am satisfied with the process so far. And want to reiterate that this resolution, that if it were to be passed, simply means that we're collecting more information, and that's what the advisory committee suggested as well. So I can vote with confidence.
And also that, should it pass, the public will have
Absolutely.
absolute opportunity to weigh in on the project.
And did you say that the recommendation is coming from the committee?
Yes.
So I might then ask Beth to actually read out the whereases so the public does
Sure.
know.
Absolutely.
Whereas with the assistance of the city's consultant, Whitenburg, the city's community development office announced a request for proposals for a mixed-use development opportunity in downtown Plattsburgh at the Jerky Street project site. And whereas a multi-million-dollar mixed-use development proposal was received from a prominent northern New York State developer prior to the RFP deadline. And whereas Whitenburg, the Community Development Office, and the city's Project Advisory Committee, which includes people representing downtown business owners, residents, and local organizations, reviewed the proposal in anticipation of making a recommendation to the Common Council. And whereas Whitenburg Community Development Office and the PAC have deemed this developer as qualified and worthy of further exploration, now therefore it is hereby resolved that based on input from Whitenburg, the Community Development Office, and the PAC, the Common Council agrees to further review the proposal by requesting that Whitenburg, the Community Development Office, and the PAC request and review additional detailed information from the proposed developer, complete additional due diligence from their prior development projects and host communities, and request an in-person presentation of the proposal. Be it further resolved that this additional detailed information shall be reviewed and analyzed by Whitenburg, Community Development Office, and the PAC prior to making a final recommendation to the Common Council in early 2019.
Thank you.
Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Pretzer?
Yes.
Formation of Plattsburgh Parking Advisory Committee.
I'd like to make a motion to waive the reading and move the resolution.
Counselor Pretzer, second by Counselor Dowdle, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Maybe I just would just like Community Development Director Miller just to very briefly explain what we'll be accomplishing with it.
Do you mind coming to the podium so the viewers can see?
As we've stated on several occasions,
the city's intent to establish a parking advisory committee to serve as, first, a conduit for community concerns regarding the implementation of the new parking program. Also to serve as an advisory committee to analyze data that is generated by the system. That includes ticketing, should they advise paid parking, what rates should be, what enforcement policy should be. This resolution establishes that advisory committee. It lays out the membership and who is responsible for nominating those members. It's a mix of downtown stakeholders from business owners, property owners, downtown residents, cultural representatives, an agency that represents those who advocate for persons with disabilities, a member of the city's Department of Public Works, a member of the city's Community Development Department, a member of the city's Police Department, and a member of the Common Council. And those particular city departments were chosen because they will have combined operational responsibility for the system. It also lists a number of tasks that this committee should undertake, and that includes reviewing the parking study that Carl Walker completed at the behest of the city, reviewing the downtown special assessment district and whether any modifications should be made to it based on the new parking system, review reports on usage, capacity, revenue, and enforcement based on ticketing systems and payment systems and enforcement data provided by the city's newly hired parking enforcement officer, research potential options for enhancements and improvements to the parking system with an emphasis in the downtown area, produce a semi-annual report to the council and the public on the data and recommendations for the system, including behavior and, of course, a financial summary so the city can see exactly where its money is going, and send to the Common Council recommendations for changes to the parking system, as I said, including adjustments to rates and enforcement policies once a consensus is reached among the committee. The Common Council, as part of this resolution, allocates a $2,000 annual budget to the committee for administrative, technical, and research support. It also lays out a schedule for the committee. Once 7 members have been approved by the Common Council, it requires the committee to have its first meeting no later than 2 weeks after that date. And it also commits the city to the creation of sufficient additional parking capacity elsewhere in the downtown to take the place of any parking that will eventually be lost when the development of the Durkee site begins in earnest. So that's a brief summary.
Question for you, Matt. Some here, like such as the infrastructure committee making recommendations for members on the committee.
Ditto strategic planning.
Do we forward names to you and you reach out to the people as, or how, what is the process?
We can make recommendations to the individual committees from the Community Development Office. If the individual committee members have spoken to stakeholders downtown who have expressed an interest to serve on the committee, they can certainly bring those names forward. But ultimately it will be the council's decision whether or not to confirm those members to the committee.
Yeah, I'm just wondering as far as the process of reaching out, or should we give names to you and you make the initial
We'll certainly
offer?
Do outreach efforts on our own, and if the council members would also like to do so, or if they would prefer to have the CD office make recommendations for their consideration, we could do that as well.
But once a pool of nominees that we each are responsible for has been gathered, it is ultimately the committee's responsibility to choose those nominees to put forward?
Yes.
So it's the committee's?
Yes, so the committees, I would imagine at the committee meetings on a monthly basis, you would make those recommendations to the full council, and then the full council would vote on whether or not to name them to the parking committee properly.
And do we have, this isn't for December meetings, or when are we looking at?
We're looking to do it as soon as possible. We've done some initial outreach efforts, but we'd like to do some additional work before we make any formal recommendations to the individual committees.
I think you did a good job in figuring out how to compose the committee, the stakeholders, and I appreciate those efforts.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Pretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves that the mayor is authorized to sign the New York State Water Infrastructure Improvement Act grant award dated November 16, 2018, confirming the city's acceptance of the grant award and intent to proceed with the project. The entire text of which has been distributed to and read by the members of the common council is hereby enacted without the reading thereof, and a copy of said grant is made part of the minutes of this meeting.
Moved by Counselor Armstrong, second by Counselor Ensel. Discussion. I can fill you in just a little bit. This is related to the recent award that you saw the council or the city receive, $4.32 million. That's obviously only about 25% of the funding. These are primarily for improvements in the sewage treatment plant that will help improve water quality, but also make a lot of aesthetic and modernization improvements and efficiency as well. Many of you have seen past presentations from Mr. Ruff on some of the items that will be included. We've discussed them in the infrastructure committee as well, but he is here if you had any additional questions. You might be wondering how we're going to make up the difference. We are hopeful that we're going to do well in the consolidated funding application cycle this year. And we also have good reason to believe that we should be able to be eligible for additional grants and zero interest loans to make this happen as well. But these have been anticipated for some time by Mr. Ruff. He's been working very hard and has a pretty ambitious plan to do many of these improvements within the next year to dovetail with the various DRI efforts that we're doing in that same area. Do you have anything you feel you need to add, or do you have any questions?
Just thank you for your effort in this regard, and it was extensive.
Any other questions? Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Pretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves that the mayor is hereby authorized to sign an addendum to agreement between Plattsburgh Housing Authority and the city of Plattsburgh for the elevators at PHA Lakeview Towers, known as project number 927 PF 141-16. The entire text of which has been distributed to and read by the members of the common council is hereby enacted without the reading thereof, and a copy of said agreement is made part of the minutes of this meeting.
Moved by Counselor Kelly and second by Counselor Dowdle. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Pretzer?
Yes.
No trouble requests at this time. I understand there's an item for Commissioner consideration.
Yes, indeed. And I'd like to invoke Rule 4.
Moved and voted Rule 4 by Counselor Armstrong, and second by Counselor Kretzer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Discussion of the item itself.
Yeah, so back to the discussion.
Okay.
And this still takes in the level 4s and brings them to the same
threes.
as
Correct.
level 3s. Now, I have a question for Richard, if he knows, does that change bringing the level 4s into level 3s and putting them on the step and longevity? How does that affect the budget going forward? Do you know that?
I have a 10-year projection. Over 10 years, it would mean $23,327, I believe, over 10 years. If those steps for those employees who are currently level 4s are moved up in the steps.
Yeah, what we looked at for numbers, I think it was a $757 increase to next year's budget alone.
Right.
Just to move those level 4 people into a level 3 step.
Right.
Right.
looking at $750 for the
Richard, do you mind
19
coming
budget.
forward?
Get the increase as well as move to a step that's closest to their salary.
Right.
Right.
Okay, never mind. Okay.
That's all the numbers I've done on it. And of course, we looked at the change for the 1.5% for the 7 people who stepped out.
Right.
Which is now conditional.
Which is conditional, that would be looked at every year based on
So
the
I guess
council.
that's a moot point now since it's conditional.
May I ask the committee what your objective was in removing the level 4 system?
Well, for my part, it was based on, you know, I mean, an evolving position, because at first, very frankly, the mayor's suggestion that we move the rest of the managers to positions that, where raises would be evaluated according to merit. And we really pondered that and looked at that, and as I've said before, as you recall, when time came to discuss those raises for the level 4s, it struck me that there was a degree of subjectivity and, if you will, arbitrary judgment. Well, perhaps that's too strong of a word, but at least subjectivity, and which really made me reevaluate that idea. So that is basically why we decided to bring them into the step system.
And I think it also simplifies it that now you have one, they're all in the same package.
And also, the inception of level 4 was basically started so that we could do the hires that were pending at the time, rather than make them level 3s, because the discussion was going on at that time. So rather than make level 3s and change it, we came up with a level 4. Also, we heard Richard talk about the 2.5% proposed pay increase was pretty much what a first-year manager makes anyway. So to tie it in, it just, to me, it just makes it cleaner, it's more user-friendly, and easier to work with.
And predictable.
Right,
You know, I mean,
that too.
predictable both for the employees and for council in terms of budgeting purposes.
The way I felt about level 4 was that it was an experiment.
Yeah.
It was an experiment to try to replace a system that seemed entrenched in the city that actually cost the taxpayers a considerable amount of money over a long period of time. So the mayor proposed this and we voted on it, and now we're not going to give him an entire year to see how this works. Is that's pretty much what you're saying here, is that?
I think we've gone through a budget cycle and have seen how that potentially could play out. I think there's a certain degree of predictability also in terms of hiring, that we didn't have the structure to fall back on with new hires. So I think this gives us stability in terms of the step system.
The grid system or step system says that if you come to work and sit in your chair for a year, you get an increase, or
Well,
2 years, or 3 years,
I think that's
whatever it is.
a vastly unfair underestimation of what happens in our city. And I think that we have been able to depend on the good service of our managers, and I see no reason to kind of dismiss their work in that, and by characterizing it that way.
I would say,
their
Mike,
work,
under that
Michelle.
scenario,
Well,
then
that's the way you put it.
the onus,
No,
under
it
that
is.
scenario, the onus would lie on the mayor to be sure that that's not
There you
taking
are.
place.
That they sit in a chair for a year and then just get a raise. If they're still sitting in that, just sitting in a chair after a year, that's not the issue then.
Okay.
I'm more curious about the longevity. Has that changed between what it currently is now and what's proposed here?
No.
Actually, it has. You added 1 or 2 new rungs to it.
believe we did.
I think we did.
Didn't the longevity end previously at 30 years? Now it goes to 40 years, is that correct? Did you make that change? Did you make that addition?
No, the level one manager agreement's always limited to 40 years.
Okay.
I think the resolution might have taken it to 35.
35,
yes.
The only contradiction between the two.
Okay, okay. Thank you for resolving that. The other thing is you've taken away 3 vacation days.
No,
No, she had them in as the discretion.
there's a flexibility
There's-
in the application of taking away one, I'm sorry, I'm confusing
Holidays.
holidays with vacation
Did I
days.
say vacation? I meant
Yeah,
holiday.
I thought
I'm
that's
sorry.
what you meant.
Yeah.
No, we've taken
Thank-
away one holiday and allowed for 2 discretionary holidays to be applied to, if you can,
Right
if you
there.
have your copies with you.
Now, on these 14 days of the year that city offices are closed, what are those managers supposed to do on those days? If
You know,
they-
as a teacher, I went into school when school was not in session, and I found it to be really a nice work atmosphere, a place where you could catch
Get
up.
work done.
Get work done.
Everything.
Without interruption.
Without interruption, without having the ongoing business of your day-to-day.
Because the city office would not be open. I think there was some,
Misunderstanding about that.
or question, would the office be open? And no.
No.
I think that, the only other thing I want to say is I think that you're hasty to dismiss the level 4 concept. And I hope that a future council will reinstate something similar to that, to give this merit pay for performance another try. Maybe it needs some refinement, maybe it needs, some additional rules and guidelines, but I'd like to see that work and I'd like to see it tried again.
You know, I would have thought that, considering the fact that there was discussion about a merit system, as we've been working through, like, the fall, that there would have been some consideration for that kind of rubric and that kind of more definite evaluation system, and it didn't occur. So perhaps it will. That's a good idea.
Thank you.
I actually am a little concerned about the way the level 4s were done, because I didn't like the way, especially in recent council meetings, that it did seem like there was individual emphasis put on individual managers, both in these discussions and when it came to level 4.
Right. It's very uncomfortable.
Yeah. I guess my question becomes, though, if we bring, and I haven't been really involved in these discussions, but I do remember when I became a counselor, one of the questions when there was the original committee, I don't know if it was actually original, but there was the committee then setting up the manager compensation package, was that that longevity payments might not be affordable for the city going forward. Now, clearly, that shouldn't be changed for people that signed on with them. So that's why I was asking Richard that question. Are we certain that that if new hires and going
Right.
far into the future of people hired by the city, our current level 4s, but mostly people into the future that are going to be hired to replace our current managers, can the city afford the longevity payments and all, and as they go forward, or is there a better way to perhaps when we're bringing new people into the city?
Well, just remember though, with new hires, there's usually someone who leaves, and the more, so they're beginning and collecting the 2% for longevity. But somebody else has left that has collected more.
And also, I believe the 3 level 4s that we have now were actually hired at a rate higher than their predecessor.
And that's why, part of the longevity thing that makes me worried is that it's based on percent of annual salary rather than the amount of time that you've spent here. I would imagine that if 2 managers were hired at the same time, and one makes 60,000, the other one makes 50,000, that when year 8 comes, or then when year 20 comes, they would get the same amount of compensation for longevity payments rather than a 2% salary. But I guess my big concern here is, I think it was brought up by the corporate counsel, and he seemed to be indicating something that our labor council said, that it might compound pretty rapidly out of control.
That's been modified since the last.
It has been modified, okay. And my other big concern that was brought up then by Dean was that there was one issue. I haven't gotten a chance to look at the new, all the new changes and really evaluate them, but there was some concern brought up by Dean of.
I can probably, Councilor Armstrong and I met with Dean and the mayor, and I believe to our satisfaction, and to everyone's satisfaction, the legal issues that were pressing have been
so to your
resolved.
To your satisfaction, there's nothing in here that you're concerned, because I know you had a concern that there was some wording in there that would open the city up to possible
Yeah, I mean,
litigation
I
in the
can't
future.
speak to policy, that's not my role. My concern was based on potential legal liability, and those concerns were listened to and addressed.
Okay.
And one thing to consider now is when they come in at a step, it depends what step they come in at. So if two managers start on the same day, one could start at an entirely different step than the other. And then that determines from there out what steps and longevity.
And that would be the councils, the council and civil service would have, depending upon.
Right, depending on how the steps are set up. Because you don't get a step every year. It's 12, 24, 36, 48. So it depends what step. This will clear that up because you're getting hired at a step now, not just a base salary.
Last week, I expressed some concern about the overall level of leave. I think you incorporate and listen to those concerns. This is pretty similar to the consensus agreement on that dimension that we had about a month ago. I still harbor some concerns about level 4. I really lament that we won't have that anymore. Based on the level 4 premises, we hired 3 outstanding individuals, knowing full well what those benefits package were, and they're still quite willing to come. They saw that it could work as an advantage, some of the flexibility we built into the level 4s that simply doesn't exist under the level 3 system. So I do lament losing that. I think that will be a loss for the city, but this is ultimately your decision.
And I would just like to comment in general about the conversations we've had at this table. And there were disagreements, and there was a lot of back and forth. There were good questions. And for the most part, I would say that pressed for explanations and so forth, that there was heated discussion, and I contributed to that. And I would like to apologize for any potential comments that could have been interpreted as being rancorous. These things happen. We're tested as counselors. We often have to make difficult decisions. We're never going to please everyone. But for the most part, overall, I would say that we've all made an effort to do our best. And I'd like to acknowledge that. And, people who've disagreed, I'd like to acknowledge, that that's part of the process. And sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes we lose our tempers. I would hope that in the future that I can avoid that.
And I'd just like to add too that this was one of the most complex issues I've had to deal with in a professional setting. I'd like to acknowledge my fellow counselors, Dowdle and Armstrong, and managers and everyone else who was involved in this process. Is it an absolutely perfect document where everyone is overjoyed with? No. But I think that it's an improvement over what we had, and I think that we've all done our best to come up with something that is fair.
One thing I'd like to say is, or ask the committee is, I don't believe we voted as a resolution was made to form that committee. Is that correct? You just formed on your own as an ad hoc committee?
We did. We kind of followed in the footsteps of your previous committee in which you participated with Councilor Essel.
We kind of took it as an issue that needed to be taken up.
What you may not have understood about or known about that committee was that we were asked to do that by the previous mayor, I believe. So we were asked to do it. And were you asked to do this by the mayor?
No, I volunteered to do it, and as a matter of fact, as I recall, you and Councilors Ensel and Dowdle did some work earlier this year, and I was motivated to take up the task once there were raises awarded to the police and fire chief. And I just felt that this was an outstanding issue that had not been resolved, and it needed resolution.
And just as a point of order going forward, we as a council should always remember to make a resolution to make these committees official. And my next question is, did you consult with the department heads and managers as you worked through this process?
As you did? Yes, we did.
That's in violation of the charter, and we shouldn't do that.
Well, then you shouldn't have done it either.
I'm admonishing myself as well, Rochelle.
Fine.
Going forward, we should remember these rules.
We informed them of our progress.
Okay. Okay.
We thought that was the courteous thing to do.
Collaborative thing to do.
Yeah.
That's, I believe that's the reason why that's included in the charters, to separate us from the managers. And no, don't shake your head, because it's in the charter. You're not supposed to talk to the managers about that sort of thing.
I believe the mayor was aware of these meetings.
I don't know.
Didn't hear any complaints.
Well, you're hearing one now. And I hope going forward, the council will not do these sorts of things in the future.
We'll have a vote.
The other thing is that I would admonish the council that if you decide to do these 1.5% raises each year for the managers who stepped out, it'll be okay, but there will be a cost to it. If at any point the council decides to do this for all the managers,
right,
then it's a problem. We could be talking about $300,000 in 10 years.
Then you're going back to your, I think, dubiously formed chart that you threw up last week. But here's the thing. There are provisions in there for council review, and that will take place. We're all members of the same council. We'll be able to take these things into account even as early as when we're developing our 5-year plan.
Any further discussion?
I have one other question. How does this proposed manager compensation plan compare to manager compensation plans of other municipalities, or like county employees, or local school employees? Do we know?
The average for a 20-year employee for paid time off is about 44 days a year. This plan gives 52 days a year, I believe, so it's generous.
I apologize for a last-minute comment or point of clarification. I don't believe, we had an effective date in prior resolutions. I don't know, maybe I missed it, that we have an effective date in this one. So we should just insert that.
I believe we discussed January 1st.
We had, I think that was in the
January
prior one. I don't
1st
think
of
it
19.
made it to this one, so we should just make sure that we know when it's effective.
Right. Would that
Do
have
we
to
need
be
to
made
make
as
an
an
amendment?
amendment, Dean?
You could just frankly tack that on, that this resolution shall be effective.
Okay.
I would move that it be effective January 1st, 2019.
Second.
So then there should be a vote on that.
All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Just have a question about the amendment. Does January 1st give us enough time to do everything that needs to be done? There's obviously some changes have to be made to vacation and holiday policies and that sort of thing, and how we keep track of those. I don't know how
Now,
we.
let's call upon our HR official. Did you hear the question, Richard?
Yes.
Okay, so you want to review that for him?
Yes, does January 1st give you enough time to make whatever changes you have to make in payroll systems, time off tracking, vacation tracking, and that sort of thing to implement this new policy?
And I don't think anybody's pay rate is gonna change before January 1st. We already know what steps are in place for next year, they're already budgeted. As far as tracking, it's not gonna change anything if we track just a different amount of days. So, the
Okay.
only thing is a question, in my mind, is the city open for business on these holiday days when managers are supposed to be coming in?
No.
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 Okay. So then, you can't open your departments and actually do business with the public?
Correct.
No.
Okay.
Mhm.
That was one question that was posed to me
Right,
this week, and so we wanted to just make sure that was clear.
Any further discussion?
Thank you, Richard.
Okay.
Last time the city changed the management compensation package was 28 years ago, so I know you understand the gravity of this. Are you prepared to vote?
Yes.
Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
No.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
No.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Counting the vote before the motion. Under new business.
Is there an initial? Yeah.
I wanted to offer a resolution for initial consideration. Resolved that the memorandum of agreement between the City of Plattsburgh and the Plattsburgh Professional Firefighters Association Local 2421 for a 7-year term retroactive to January 1st, 2014, and continuing through December 13th, 2020, shall be and hereby is ratified and approved by the mayor, and shall be and hereby is authorized to execute a collective bargaining agreement containing its terms on behalf of the city.
I'd like to make a motion to implement Rule 4.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Kretzer, second by Counselor Armstrong. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion on the resolution itself. I'd like to make a comment that the firefighters actually gone for about more than a dozen years without a contract. Having been involved with negotiations, obviously negotiations are always very difficult on both sides. I think, though, that both parties were very satisfied with the outcome, and it'd be nice to be able to go ahead clearly without trying to adjudicate these things in the court, but instead do them on a voluntary basis between the two groups. I'm very excited, not only for the city, but also for the firefighters, so they can have a clean slate and be on the same terms as everybody, all of our other valued employees in the city as well. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Are there any other new business or councilor reports?
I'll just mention that I did send out to the council a very rough draft of a possible change to local law concerning tobacco use, which would then expand that to read an inclusion of e-cigarettes and any other vaping devices. I'm getting feedback from a variety of people, and I hope I'll hear from Tobacco Free New York. I appreciate your input. and have enjoyed working with you, and I hope to get some input as well from corporate counsel.
Any other new business and council reports? Councilor Kelly?
I received a phone call from a Mr. Herman Stone, who lives on St. John Street in the city, and he asked if the snow plows could go by his home a little slower because it's pushing the snow up onto the side of his house. And he's a 71-year-old man, and he needs some help to maintain his snow. So could you guys take a look? All right. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that.
Oh, and since you reminded me of snow, we did receive some feedback from a resident who was actually on the snow removal and sidewalk committee, and we're hoping that we can do a little bit better job of monitoring the sidewalks. This person counted 14 that had not been shoveled. I don't know if any of them were cited. I know, didn't you say 28?
Roughly, yeah.
28 people had been cited. I did let him know, though, in terms of follow-up with the Department of Public Works, that you have your own schedule of duties that you have to carry out, and that as soon as you could take care of those duties, the sidewalk becomes then something on your schedule.
That's what
Okay.
And if you feel it, on the record.
All right.
And once we determine the other, all that, 24 hours later, we then go out and cycle.
All right, thank you.
So we are approaching another date of that sort, so people do please be mindful of their sidewalks. The police are one sensor, and the building inspector's office is another sensor to create these lists, and they work closely with each other. The public should know too that we have hired our codes enforcement officer, our new our parking enforcement officer, and she has been now fully trained, and she is in the process of hitting the streets and giving warning tickets to increase people's awareness that the existing parking rules in the city of Plattsburgh are being enforced. So it gives everybody.
Do we know how long the warnings are going to continue to be issued?
Roughly the month of December, but it could be shorter.
So essentially by the first of the year, enforcement will begin?
First of the year, that's right, if not earlier. So please park accordingly. There's no change in any regulations, merely an enforcement issue. It hasn't been enforced for a number of years now. Any other new business or council reports? Seeing none, can I ask the public to please come up and address the council again, a 5-minute limit, and state your name and address. And this is on any issue of mutual concern. Please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Ray McMarkle. My vehicle was towed in the housing area this last snowstorm we had, and it was my fault. I'm a veteran. I'm a senior citizen. I have anxiety and depression. I took my medication. It's my fault. The lights were on. I go to get out to go get my truck, and it's gone. Well, so I said, yeah, well, there's nothing I can do about it. What I don't like is these damn tow companies. I called the city police, and they said it'd be an $80 charge for the tow and a $35 parking ticket. I get out there, I didn't get my truck back to 5:30. I had to wait for my son to come home from work. $160. I turn around, now I get a parking violation for $35. I know I'm in the wrong, but you need to set a flat rate with these tow companies. There's one tow company that charges you $240. They're doubling the prices. If you can do it to the cab companies, you can do it to these tow drivers. And I'm a senior citizen. They're taking advantage of people. That's all I have to say.
I will look into that. I did have a brief conversation, not knowing this issue arose for you just a few
Yeah.
days ago, because it's that time of year.
Yeah, but then they know they can make the money.
Right.
Now I gotta pay a parking ticket too. I have a week to pay it.
We'll explore that. Thank you
Yeah.
for bringing that up.
That's all it was, you know. It was my fault, I agree. But they're taking advantage of people. These tow motors, well, these people that are hauling your vehicle away, you need to come up with a flat rate. It's double jeopardy. You get hit by a parking violation, then you have to wait all day to get your truck. And then I was falling all over the place because I had to go to the Quinto and walk all the way back to get my stuff at the housing area. I took a lot of falls.
Uh-oh.
But besides that, it was my fault.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But there are these, like I said, the tow companies are making a killing.
Yeah.
They're taking advantage of everyone.
Hello.
So I apologize for my absence, Reality Check's absence for a while, but I am a dad now, and my daughter will be 6 months in about a week. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Sorry, you got lots of So my name's Scott Roosh. I'm with Reality Check, Plattsburgh, Franklin, Essex. And I had a parent from one of my Reality Check students send me this picture, and if you're friends with me on Facebook, which some of you are, you saw the post, and so she sent me this picture, and she was concerned. So I just want to read my post really quick, and I know in the past you, the person who I replaced from Reality Check, you talked about point of sale at one point, so hopefully this will reignite some of that, whatever talks you had in the past. So the parent messaged me this and asked, how is this allowed? So let's get the conversation rolling. What are your thoughts on advertising and our youth? What are you willing to do to protect our youth from tobacco and nicotine addiction, marketing, and paraphernalia? As a community, are we willing to take a stand on how many tobacco retailers there are? Are we willing to question why retailers are allowed to be within 500 feet or 1,000 feet of schools and places where youth learn, grow, and play? Isn't it absurd to think health stores and pharmacies sell a product that when used as intended kills the person using it? 3 of Plattsburgh City schools have tobacco retailers within 600 feet of them. 2 are elementary schools and the others in middle school. This doesn't include CB Tech, which lies on the town of Plattsburgh. Also, our youth in the city have to walk to school because this is a walking district. They shouldn't have to see advertising like this that encourages them to use a deadly product, in this case that claims to be natural, but still has all the deadly chemicals associated with combustible tobacco products. My final thoughts are, on this topic for the moment, stores popular among adolescents contain almost 3 times more tobacco marketing materials compared to other stores in the same community. Let this sink in and also think about this fact. The average age of a new smoker or vapor in New York is 13. Marketing matters, point of sale matters, it's time to do something. On the second page, I think is something you guys had in the past, but this is something I put together quickly. All the different color circles there represent the schools, the high school, the elementary schools, and the middle schools. And then all the little blue balloon things are tobacco retailers, which gives you the idea of how close they are to the middle of the circles where the schools are located. So, if anything, I would hope that in the future we can reignite this relationship with Tobacco Free and myself, and maybe talk about point of sale and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Margaret Holland. I live at 16 Palmer Street in the city, and I have a few concerns I would certainly welcome your assistance with. The first one, I'll start low, is Elm Street. Elm Street going onto Palmer. If you start on the corner of Elm and you go up to, I live at 16, so it starts at 2. I have 21 potholes that go to my house from Elm Street. That's just one of the things. I don't know now with the snow if it can be rectified now or not. Thanksgiving, my son came, he drove 17.5 hours. I sent a memo to the mayor and to Mike Brody. I had someone plow my driveway, which I paid for, and my son couldn't get in because there was 20 feet of snow, 3 feet piled. My son had to clear 10 feet so he could get in. The other 10 feet is still there. I have yet to hear from Mike Brody or the mayor on that. And I don't know what you can suggest to me. Another concern that I had 2 attempted break-ins. Once I called the police. This officer came and he said, well, there's really not much more that you can do. I said, well, I live here alone. Do you think that you could drive by at night, maybe once a night? We can't do that. We're 4 officers short. So the second time it happened, I said, I won't call. Well, I called. But then I hear where there's an officer assigned to downtown Margaret Street, but they can't make a trip down the city of Palmer Street.
Is that, I'm sorry, is that Short Palmer or is it on the other side?
Palmer Street, not Palmer Court.
Court, okay.
Street. It's
okay.
between Elm and Stetson.
Okay.
Elm and Stetson. And I saw in the paper, it was either this morning or yesterday morning, there were some cars that were broken into on Lafayette and Montcalm, next street over. So that has been a problem. Another concern that I have, I had a small tree in front of my house. There was about a 10-foot branch that was, I don't know if it was struck by lightning or what, but it was just kind of hanging there, caught in the crook of the tree. And MLD workers were next door at my neighbor's, and so I said, can you get this branch down? I don't want it to hit some child going to Oak or Bailey. So they did, and I said, you know, I've got trees and the wires behind my house, in my yard. And I called the city, I called Public Works 1.5 years ago. And he said, lady, we started out with 45 people, we have 23 now. So there's nothing I can do. I spoke to Mike Brody about, I guess that's him, Joe was telling me, about the people that are walking around with the fluorescent yellow pennies. And I see them walking around. I started out calling the sheriff's department until I finally reached the proper office. Because I thought, you know, I see them walking up and down the streets with empty bags and this handheld thing that I guess it's to pick up trash. And I thought, maybe they could do some raking of the area from the sidewalk to the road or shovel the sidewalks. Mike said, no, they can't do that. The city's liable. Well, as a homeowner, I don't own the sidewalk, but I have to clean it. So wouldn't that apply to me as well? I mean, what I see these people doing is just walking down the street with the cigarettes and they fling them. There has to be some better service that they can be doing.
Isn't that part of the court? Is that part of the court system?
It's a county.
Is that the county court system?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the last thing, I paid a visit to the mayor last spring. There was a young man that was in the office. His secretary wasn't there, nobody was there. And I said, I really need to speak to the mayor. He said, I promise you I will call. I will have him call or I will call you back. Okay. Well, it didn't happen. But somebody by the name of Mr. Marks called me. And that conversation pretty much was, well, I was a fool not to pursue. I had gotten hit in the library, a shelf fell on me. And he said, you're really foolish not to bring that to my attention. Well, how am I supposed to know that's where it's to go to? And he said, how much was the bill? I said, it was over $6,000. And I was in the ER for 10 hours. Well, you were really a fool not to do something about that. But I never heard from the mayor. I think that's about all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Margaret. Thank you, Margaret. Yep.
Any other individuals please like to come and address the council? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Ansel.
One more person.
Hello, my name is Ryan Brienza, and I'm a resident of the city of Plattsburgh. Would just like to ask some questions to the councilors and maybe also give some answers about the proposal I gave last week for placing our cryptocurrency heat recapture boxes around the city. I was wondering if any of you have taken a look at that and have any questions for me about that.
Did you come to the MLD meeting?
No, I was not at the MLD meeting.
We're not really allowed to
Yes.
answer questions.
Have a dialogue.
However, if you would describe for us what it is you propose to do, perhaps that would help.
Sure thing. So what I proposed and what our company is looking to do is we've made this local invention in town that can recapture the heat that these cryptocurrency miners produce. We're looking to place these around the city at different locations.
In city buildings?
Outside city buildings. These boxes can be placed outside and vented in. We're looking at liquid cooled options as well as just using the hot air from them.
But would the miners be within city building?
No, they'd be in the box that is located outside the building. So what we've been looking to do is place these around the city at different city buildings or businesses that would like to get the benefit of this. By us putting these boxes there, we can give off free heat, which will save the city a tremendous amount of money, especially during the heating season, which is now, and other times to come. So the main thing is, at least that's holding us back at the moment, is just the moratorium. So I'd like if you guys could consider lifting the moratorium in the short term.
Again, I would ask the same question as I asked last week. How many units would it take to heat?
Depends on the building. Each one of our boxes holds 108 of these units, and depending on the building, it's all different. So some buildings may use one, may use half of a box, or multiple boxes.
How is the power supply being fed to these boxes?
All the buildings that we're looking at have the existing electrical infrastructure at them, so we would just tap onto that and then be sub-metered off of it. So we would cover all the electrical costs.
And how large is the box?
It's about 80 square feet.
And so these boxes then are currently mining cryptocurrency while
Yeah.
they're providing heat for buildings.
Yeah, so the miners inside, which are the specialized computers that do the cryptocurrency mining, they're processing transactions mostly, and they're also, the way that people make money is that they are generating a cryptocurrency. And we have a lot of investors that are interested in the area, as well as we're a hosting company, so we don't actually own most of the hardware. Other clients from around the country mail it to us and then pay us a monthly fee. So we'd be plugging them in for them. But all these miners, since they use a lot of processing power, they exhaust a pretty hot, or high temperature heat. And from that, this box contains it all and it gets exhausted at one point.
It seems like our MLD supervisor has reservations of whether the concept is actually feasible. And I'm wondering if you might be willing to forward your plans kind of in written form with schematics and with all of the information that I'm sure you have in regards to how these actually function, the electrical draw, and all of those other things to us, and then, or to the mayor's office, and then that could be, I'm not sure the proper conduit, but just to be able to have some of the answers addressed. Would you, I'm not sure, I feel it's something that potentially could have some merit, but we don't know the answers.
And we would rely upon Mr. Tracy's input as well.
So if you're able to, I guess, forward to us and we can forward to him and to others who may have information that we don't have, then that I feel like would be a great first step in actually getting the conversation really started.
Okay, yeah, we can provide any information that's needed. I'll do some write-ups and stuff and get that to all the counselors next week, as well as we also have a working prototype at our operation, and any of the counselors are welcome to come view it, and we can kind of show you at least what it's doing at the moment. So.
Is anyone else doing this besides you, Ryan?
No, this is, at least to my knowledge, the first in the world of this to be used. And we've had some yeses from some other local communities around to deploy these, but my goal is to do this here in Plattsburgh first.
And the hope is that the information you provide leads us to lift the moratorium, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Actually, we're also the first in having the building code structure to require the heat regeneration that he's designing into. So this was a couple of firsts for Plattsburgh. And you mentioned the first step is to do some of the engineering. Actually, the second step is probably do the engineering. The first step is I implore the council to figure out what you want to do with the noise laws. Take the time you need, but do it, and lift the moratorium.
That's that was one of my concerns with the moratorium was not only the noise level, and I wonder if these have any sort of baffling on them that would baffle the noise of 100 and some miners
They
inside
will.
the box.
The box already suppresses the noise. Where the main noise concern could come into play is the exhaust fan. It won't be over the new noise ordinance law. It's under that, as well as there's some options we're looking to do, which is liquid cooling, which will be minimal noise.
And I also have some concerns about the interior temperature of buildings. I think that might have some OSHA issues there.
In this write-up that Josh spoke of, could you also include some of the liabilities for the city and how you plan to mitigate those liabilities?
Yep, sure thing.
We need to see that as well, and we would also need to see what the city's obligations would be. Okay.
Yeah, sure thing. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can I just add, not for you, Ryan, thank you. This previous gentleman, the text that I did receive was from someone who has some working knowledge of the towing and snow, said that there is actually, limits are in place, and that there's wording in there that should not be charged a storage fee if it's less than 24 hours.
Right, because we addressed this issue last year to get more towing companies on board because we were paying so little that we couldn't find anybody to come more than 5 miles from outside of town. But in doing so, we, I believe, established a flat fee, that the price is not
to fluctuate.
To
And there shouldn't be a storage
fluctuate,
fee under
right.
24 hours.
Right.
I didn't know about
Right.
that, that's why I hurried up, went out and got my truck. Trying to get me out there, but they wind up soaking me for a storage fee too. They're ripping people off, but I'm sorry.
Well, they shouldn't have had to pay the storage fee.
$160 when the police department told me it would be $80 no and $35 fee. I knew it.
Any other items?
I learned a lesson this time.
I just wanted to say that maybe you could look into some of the issues that I did bring up about, I was told the shortage of the police, the wires in the trees, various other things, maybe making use of the people with the fluorescent kidneys, plowing the snow in my driveway. Anyway, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. I do think that the moratorium should be addressed pretty soon. We have passed litigation. I know we're waiting, we want to talk about the noise ordinance unless there's any other legislation people are thinking about on that issue. I do think once the noise legislation is taken care of, that we should very well consider ending the moratorium.
I expressed another one with the heat, internal heat allotment.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second by Councilor McFarland. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Menzel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Cresser?
Yes.
Make a meeting.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Did you send me that highlighted changes to the new management?
Did I send it to you?
You did.
The amended one.
It's up.
It should be out.
It's attached to the.
The new one's
No, but it's not highlighted.
that one is actually just